Hi, everybody. This is Evil Betty 007 reporting back at you for my second episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about something very different than my inaugural episode. I'm going to be talking about a show that I really, just as a fan, I love it to death, and I've spent an obscene amount of money collecting it. That is, of course, Dragon Ball Z. To kind of lend some background, this is the show that got me into anime, and it has kept me there. And of course, there's other shows I like. I'm not taking away from them, but this is the show. Um, there is a YouTuber, uh, which I will put his channel link in the description box. Um, his channel is called Quaman's Land. That's QAAMANS Land, LAND, separate word. And you can search him. You can search him up on YouTube, and he is, I would consider, a very good, reliable, authoritative source on all things Dragon Ball. The other, of course, is Vegito Mike EX from Daizenshu EX, now Kaizenshu, and he is a what I would consider a definitive source on Dragon Ball lore and mythos, etc. So there was a video where Qualman talked about the history of Trunks, which I heretofore am going to be referring to the Hot Trunks timeline, which is History of Trunks as an acronym, HOT. And during the Hot timeline, he put this very elaborate and well done, well researched video that I largely agree with to be accurate regarding the fate of the five cells pertaining to four timelines, the multiverse theory, which is the string theory physicists theorize that regarding time travel, and what that states is that if someone goes back in time past a certain commonality in all timelines, which every timeline is created by a different set of decisions, thus lending itself to a multiverse theory. So in layman's, this means if we have, I'm in America, so I'll use this as an example. If we had lost the war against the British, then you would have a completely different timeline in a different on a different Earth, in a, occupying the same space-time continuum. This is called a multiverse. So the two times can run parallel to each other, even though they're quite antithetical to each other. So um, you have one timeline where we won against the Brits. We have one timeline where we lost against the Brits. And obviously, of the decisions informed after those events dramatically alter and change the timelines that we know, in so much that it splits them apart. That way, one predetermined event that has already happened can be altered without affecting the other. Thus, they run in parallel. And this is how it works in Dragon Ball. Whenever Trunks goes back in time, because he intervenes with the fight against Frieza that was originally intended for Goku, because he gave Goku the heart medication, thus preventing his death, then this created a butterfly effect, where in doing so, he has now created a separate timeline because all the events that would have come from the original, what we will refer to going forward as the common timeline, has been irrevocably changed. So that's just the basics of it. And if you really wish to go into greater detail, go check out his video. I will put a link in the description box below. It is really good. Um, the 40-minute long video he put, honestly, it will seem like you wouldn't even notice the time passing by. It's very entertaining and informative. That stated, he did even bring up and address certain timeline and plotline continuity issues that weren't addressed in the writing of the show, either in the anime or the manga, and he put some hypotheses into trying to wrap those up. To that end, I have some questions that he didn't perhaps think to ask or bring up during his discussion at the time that I'm hoping he will listen to this video and rebuttal with a video of his own or address it in some way. So here we go. So my first question is, according to Quaman's lands, I'm showing plural possessive there, video, he mentioned that the cell from the unseen timeline traveled back in time to a predetermined set of time coordinates, which were already instructed into the computer of Trunks' time travel machine when that cell killed the Trunks, the that version, that timeline's future Trunks, um, whenever he traveled back in the past, creating the events in the common timeline that we know to be the Cell Saga. When he explains this to Piccolo, he says that he didn't program the time, that it was already set, he just hit a button and off he went, and that happened to be 1 year prior to the events that we know to have taken place, where Trunks intervenes with Goku's fight with Frieza and defeats Frieza and sets everything into motion. So Quammen postulated that, well, why would he go that far back? And he addressed it by saying, well, maybe he was going back to a point in time where he wouldn't have to expose his identity to the Z Fighters, and then in turn take this opportunity to create to prevent everything from happening by assassinating Dr. Gero, taking out his lab, destroying Cell in the larva chamber, and destroying the androids before they could be activated. And that would make sense in theory. But there's only one problem. His Trunks' time point of interference in the timeline, where it creates a divergent timeline in the multiverse, is when he comes back in order to prevent Goku's death by giving him the heart medication and interfering with Frieza's fight, which again was stated was 1 year before the cell of the unseen timeline originally traveled back in time to, because again, he didn't program the coordinates, he just hit the button, off he went. So that meant he came back a year prior, Trunks set that timeline. That would mean that in doing so, another multiverse timeline would have been created, since it would have predated the original interference caused by the initial time travel that Trunks did. So that is one issue that I would like to have Quammen go through and explain, A, what would have been the point, and B, if he agrees with that. Because he says it later in the anime when he's talking to Gohan after they've all split off to go their separate ways to figure out, where Vegeta's at and so on and so forth, and go check on Goku, that um, that Gohan actually asked Trunks this very question. Why can't you just go back to an earlier time and prevent this? And he stated, well, it wouldn't affect this time's events because they've already happened, and my involvement already began here. So I think I've kind of like answered my own question, and I know Toriyama is infamous for just kind of making this stuff up as he goes. But I'd like to get his opinion on that. The second question I have to Quammen is, why didn't Bulma go to Planet Namek, which at this point there's no Frieza, there's no space pirates or anything for them to deal with. Why didn't she go to Planet Namek and the common timeline where Goku died of a heart attack prior to Trunks's interference, or rather I should say in the hot timeline where there was no interference, Goku dies of a heart attack, the Z Fighters are killed by the androids. Why didn't she go to Planet Namek and use the Namekian Dragon Balls, which she knew existed, and resurrect Piccolo, thus resurrecting Kami, thus resurrecting the Dragon Balls, thus allowing the Dragon Balls to um, revive those killed by the androids of the things, and at the very least, giving them a chance to regroup and retrain and reface these opponents again. So that's something that just never made sense to me why she wouldn't do that. And no, I don't subscribe to the belief that that wasn't possible because with all due respect, if you can bend the space-time continuum by creating a working time machine, then you can make a spaceship. Seriously. Okay. And then my last question to Quammen would be once Trunks returned to the hot timeline and destroyed the androids with his increased powers attained from the training in the Room of Spirit and Time, as well as the Zenkai boost he received from his recovery from being killed by Cell. Um, why didn't he then go use the Dragon Balls of Namek? Since resources would have been available, since they were reconstructing, and since he would have access to that technology, he could have simply gone to Namek, especially armed with the knowledge that he met Dende in the past, other things, that he would be able to know about Korin, Kami's Lookout. Therefore, that since Korin was never killed, Korin could be a link to Kaio-sama, and Kaio-sama, King Kai, would have therefore be able to assist Trunks in finding New Namek, or Bulma could have calculated it. Also, it doesn't state that New Namek was any was in any different position than where the old Namek was at. It just they when the Namekians wished for a new planet of their own, it was given to them. It doesn't state where it went. So by that theory, the dragon Porunga could have just put it back where it was, which would be convenient and make sense. So again, how come no one went to go get these Dragon Balls and use them to any effective degree? I just don't understand that. So that's just a little kind of complaint slash question I had, and I'm hoping that Quammen could answer that. Anyways, thank you and have a good day.